Hello everyone. This is part 8 of my series of videos about great sounding albums that I would recommend to audiophiles. As usual, I'm trying to recommend albums from different genres. An album from an artist whose previous band is known for making great sounding albums. An audiophile favorite jazz album. And 3 albums that has now become legendary. This might not be a recommendation but a reminder that these albums exist for your hearing pleasure. So here it is. First is Down the Road Wherever by Mark Knopfler. This is the 9th studio album by Scottish musician Mark Knopfler, released on November 2018 by Blue Note Records. Rock fans will be familiar with Mark Knopfler, who was the lead guitarist, singer and songwriter of Dire Straits, whose albums are perennially included on best albums lists. There are no rock songs on this album. Instead, this is a laid-back, quiet, and reflective album. You can hear Knopfler's trademark guitar solos on some of the songs, but they are polite, never too long, and not used for grandstanding. This album was recorded at Knopfler's British Grove studio, which are known for using a mixture of old and new audio technologies. The sound of this album is clean with a broad soundstage, which allows you to hear the separation of instruments and voices clearly. There are light touches of fiddle playing, which is probably an allude to Knopfler's roots. The theme of much of the songs are bittersweet, most of them from his own life story, like the track One Song at a Time, from which the album gets its title. It contains memories of his travels as a musician. My favorite is the track Matchstick Man, in which he accompanies himself with just an acoustic guitar and sings about a lone traveling musician hitchhiking home in the snow after a gig. It's a beautiful song. Down the Road Wherever is an impressive entry into Mark Knopfler's discography, although he has nothing else to prove. Next is Ambient 1 Music for Airports by Brian Eno. This is the 6th studio album by English musician Brian Eno, released in March 1978, and the CD I have was released in 2004. It is the first album by Eno that is categorized as ambient music. Ambient music was still relatively not popular and was not yet considered a genre at the time of its first release. It was initially dismissed by critics and listeners, but has become the first album of ambient music to become popular, and later recognized as the first deliberately ambient recording. There are music magazines that consider this album as the greatest ambient album of all time. Eno conceived an album of music designed for airports after spending several hours waiting for a flight at Germany's Cologne-Bonn airport and becoming annoyed by its uninspired atmosphere. He intended for the album to still function within various other situations. The album consists of 4 compositions created by layering tape loops of differing lengths and was designed to be played continuously looped as a sound installation with the intent of diffusing the anxious atmosphere of an airport terminal. Brian Eno wrote his thoughts about ambient music on the liner notes of the CD, and at the end of it he wrote, "It must be as ignorable as it is interesting." Next is Cafe Blue by Patricia Barber. This is the 3rd studio album by American songwriter, composer, singer, and pianist Patricia Barber, released in 1994 by Premonition Records. This audiophile favorite album is often reissued on both LP and multiple digital formats and is Patricia Barber's most popular and best regarded album. The CD I have is the original 1994 CD. The music on this album is often played at audio stores in late 1990s and 2000s. It was recorded and mixed by Jim Anderson, who is a well-known name in record producing. Patricia Barber is a classically trained jazz pianist, and her recordings are renowned for their sound quality and unique, sometimes eclectic arrangements. Cafe Blue gained for her a strong audiophile following, which was solidified with a series of equally fine-sounding and well-engineered albums that followed. The music on this album is an eclectic mix of pop and jazz with 2 songs written by Patricia. She recorded Cafe Blue as part of a quartet that had been playing together live for quite some time. Barber is on piano and vocals, Michael Arnopol is on bass, John McLean plays guitars, and Mark Walker handles percussion. Barber's voice on this album is vivid and clearly defined. Next is Rage Against the Machine's self-titled album. This is the debut studio album by American rock band Rage Against the Machine, released on November 1992 by Epic Records. The band consists of vocalist Zach De La Rocha, bassist and backing vocalist Tim Comerford, guitarist Tom Morello, and drummer Brad Wilk. They melded heavy metal and rap music, punk rock and funk with anti-authoritarian, anti-capitalist, and revolutionary lyrics. This album is politically themed and might not be some people's cup of tea. From their name, to this album cover, to the memorable lyric, "You, I won't do what you tell me," everything about this band spelled defiance and revolution. Lyrics written by Zach De La Rocha are strongly against the political status quo in the USA and generally against any form of government control over the masses. The album's artwork is notable for its graphic photograph of Vietnamese monk who burned himself to death in Saigon in 1963. Bomb Track is the perfect opening for this album. Killing in the Name might be the most popular song. This is an excellent recording. No samples, no synths, and no keyboards have been used to make this recording. Just an electric guitar, an electric bass, and a standard drum kit. The mixing has been made by Andy Wallace and the final mastering by Bob Ludwig at Masterdisc in New York City. Bob Ludwig is the mastering engineer of similar great-sounding albums like Brothers in Arms, In Rainbows, and Random Access Memories. If you want to use a metal album as a test track, this is it. The sound of electric bass and drum is precise and clear. You will need bass-capable loudspeakers to fully appreciate this album. And last but not the least is Bootleg Series Volume 4, Bob Dylan Live 1966, the Royal Albert Hall Concert. This is a 2-disc live album by Bob Dylan, released by Columbia in 1998. It was the second installment of Bob Dylan's Bootleg Series and is named Volume 4. The first 3 volumes was released as box set in 1991. This is the most famous volume. This performance, which critics recognize as one of the greatest live performances in rock and roll history, has been bootlegged dozens of times. The early bootlegs attributed the recording to the Royal Albert Hall, so it became known as the Royal Albert Hall Concert. That's the reason the Royal Albert Hall have quotation marks on the title. The recording happened at the Manchester Free Trade Hall during Dylan's 1966 World Tour, a few days before his appearance at the Royal Albert. The concert consisted of 2 parts. Disc 2 is the official version of the famous bootleg when Dylan with his electric guitar and his band The Hawks came out for the concert's second half, where he was called Judas and there was a confrontational atmosphere. Disc 1 is the first half of the concert, which was well received and where Dylan played all acoustic songs and just accompanying himself on guitar and harmonica. This is the disc I listened to more. The CD packaging is a collector's dream as it comes with a 56-page booklet full of rare photos, including an essay by Dylan's friend, folk musician Tony Glover. The sound quality is fantastic, and in case you are wondering how Columbia were able to accomplish that on a live performance, there is information about the recording on the booklet. There is intensity in Dylan's performance in all the tracks, and as Dylan tells his musician at one point, "Play it f***ing loud." And that's the 5 CDs of hi-fi albums that I would recommend to audiophiles for this video. The dedication of these artists combined with the expertise and resourcefulness of the sound engineers make these albums exceptional. I have a lot more great audiophile albums and CDs that I will share on my next video, so please subscribe. I hope you will enjoy this selection and still discover something new. Let me know your thoughts if you have already listened to these albums. Happy listening.